10.5 is about volume and surface area. So we saw that volume refers to the amount of space occupied by a solid object. And this is determined by the number of cubic units it takes to fill the interior of that object. So the volume V of a box or a rectangular solid is the product of its length, width, and height. If the length, width, and height are the same, then the rectangular solid is called a cube. So our volume of a rectangular solid is length times width times height, or if it's a cube, it's just side cubed. So let's find the volume of the rectangular solid. So V equals L times W times H. And so we're going to take our three numbers. We got 6 meters times 2 meters times 4 meters. And that gives us 48 cubic meters. You are about to begin work on a swimming pool in your yard. The first step is to have a hole dug that is 90 feet long, 60 feet wide, and 6 feet deep. You will use a truck that can carry 10 cubic yards of dirt and charges $35 per load. How much will it cost you to have all the dirt hauled away? So my truck is in cubic yards, but we were talking about feet. So the first thing we want to do is convert feet to yards. So 90 feet times 1 yard over 3 feet and so our feet cancel. We end up with 90 over 3 yards. And this is just 30 yards. We want to do the same thing for 60. So 60 feet times 1 yard over 3 feet. The feet cancel. And so we get 60 over 3 yards. And that's 20 yards. And the last one is 6 feet times 1 yard over 3 feet. So your feet cancel. You end up with 6 over 3 yards, or 2 yards. And so now we can find the volume of this hole that we're digging. So our volume is 30 yards times 20 yards times 2 yards. And that comes out to be 1,200 cubic yards. Now our trucks can haul away 10 cubic yards. So if there's 1,200 total, and we can only take away 10 at a time, we're going to take our 1,200 and divide it by 10. And so this would end up being 120 trucks would be needed. Now a truck costs $35. So 120 trucks times the $35 gives me a total cost of $4,200 just to dig the hole before we put the pool in. A rectangular solid is an example of a polyhedron, which is a solid figure bounded by polygons. A rectangular solid is bounded by 6 rectangles called faces. By contrast, a pyramid is a polyhedron whose base is a polygon and whose sides are triangles. So the volume of a pyramid is given by 1/3 capital B times H, where B is the area of the base. H is the height. So this is like a 2-step problem. You need to find the area of the base of your pyramid and then multiply it by the height and divide by 3, or multiply by 1/3. So capped with a pointed spire on top of its 48 stories, the Transamerica Tower in San Francisco is a pyramid with a square base. The pyramid is 256 meters. Each side of the square base has a length of 52 meters. Although San Franciscans disliked it when it opened in 1972, they have since accepted it as part of the skyline. Find the volume of the building. And so the base on this one is a square. And so our capital B, we have that the length of the sides of the square is 52 meters. So that means we need to do 52 meters times 52 meters. And so this gives me 2,704 square meters. Our height is 256 meters. So now that we have all the parts that are needed, we're going to plug it into the volume formula. 1/3 capital BH. So we have 1/3 times 2,704 square meters times 256. Well, that gives us a volume of 1/3 times 692,224 cubic meters. And then dividing by 3 or multiplying by 1/3, we get 230,741 cubic meters. Now, not every three-dimensional figure is a polyhedron. So, for example, the right circular cylinder, it looks like a soup can or a stack of coins. The volume of this is given by pi times r squared times h, where r is the radius of the circle and h is the height. So let's go ahead and plug this in for example 4. We're given the diameter, which is 20 yards, and so the radius is 10 yards. The height is 9 yards. So plugging in, we have V equals pi r squared h. Well, that's pi times 10 yards squared times 9 yards, or pi times 100 square yards times 9 yards. This gives us 900 pi cubic yards, and we can use 3.14 as an approximation, and I'm getting 2,827 cubic yards. Building on this, we can now find the volume of a cone. So the volume of a cone is 1/3 times pi times r squared times h, where r is again the radius and h is the height. So our radius in this case is 7 meters, and our height is 10 meters. So we have V equals 1/3 pi r squared h. This is 1/3 pi. Our radius is 7 meters squared times 10 meters. Well, that's 1/3 pi times 49 square meters times 10 meters. Or we get V equals 1/3 pi times 490 cubic meters. So we would do 490 divided by 3, which is not going to give me a great number. And then multiply it by pi, or 3.14, and we get about 513 cubic meters. A sphere is a set of points in space equally distant from a given point, its center. So a sphere is just a ball. A line segment from the center to a point on the sphere is just a radius of the sphere. And so we can find the volume of a sphere, and it's given by 4/3 pi r cubed, where r is the radius. So an ice cream cone is 5 inches deep and has a radius of 1 inch. A spherical scoop of ice cream also has a radius of 1 inch. If the ice cream melts into the cone, will it overflow? Excuse me. So we are comparing the volumes. We want to see if the volume of the cone is big enough to hold the volume of the sphere or the ice cream scoop. So let's look up do the volume of the cone first. And so a cone's formula is given by 1/3 pi r squared h. Well, our r is 1 inch, and our height is 5 inches. But this just gives us 1/3 pi times 5 cubic inches. And so let's round to the nearest whole number. It gives us about 5 cubic inches. Now let's look at the volume of the sphere or the ice cream scoop. And so this one is given by 4/3 pi r cubed. Well, our r in this case is still 1 inch. And so that gives us 4/3 pi cubic inches. And let's round to the nearest whole number. You get about 4 cubic inches. So because the volume of the sphere, which is 4 cubic inches, is less than the 5 cubic inches, or the volume of the cone, it will not overflow. And the last thing we're going to talk about is surface area. So in addition to volume, we can also measure the area of the outer surface of the three-dimensional object, which is called the surface area. And this is measured in square units. So a cube is just 6s squared, where s is the side. The rectangular solid is 2lw plus 2lh plus 2wh. And the circular cylinder is 2 pi r squared plus 2 pi rh. So let's find the surface area of the rectangular solid. We're using 2lw plus 2lh plus 2WH. So that's 2 times 8 yards times 5 yards plus 2 times 8 yards times 3 yards plus 2 times 5 yards times 3 yards. And so we get 80 square yards plus 48 square yards plus 30 square yards, which gives us a whopping total of 158 square yards.